Greetings, friends! Today, I want to showcase the complete endgame guide for my Bleed and Burn Ritualist build in Path of Exile 2 Return of the Ancients. This is a variation of one of my previous builds, Bleed and Greed, for people that are not so much interested in min-maxing the magic finding aspect, but instead want the maximum DPS output for the most challenging content in the game. In this video, I'll cover everything you need to know like gems, gear slots, passives and jewels. This build uses many expensive items, so I do not recommend starting it unless you are ready to invest at least 150 divine orbs. If you want to use the new build helper feature for this build, all you have to do is go on Mobalytics and click the download build file from there. Then just paste it into your PoE2 build planner folder and you're done. This is a level 96 Ritualist build that is using an attack called Rake to apply a guaranteed heavy bleed to the enemy. This bleed DPS is converted to fire damage through our unique ring, and our attacks aggravate these ignites every time we aggravate the bleed by using our unique spear, Citas. This item combination allows us to take advantage of the high physical bleed number and multiply the damage taken by monsters through things like elemental weakness with blasphemy, elemental penetration stats, and increases to our fire damage as well as physical damage. We use Spear Field as a secondary to buff ourselves with rage and consume some of it to boost our rake skill, but it also serves as our AoE clear and spammable skill. The build strengths are its insane bleed DPS, making enemies melt for a very satisfying gameplay experience. And by using Herald of Blood and Blood Boil combination, we get a nice AoE explosion for our clear speed, along with the ability to be very mobile and tanky. The biggest downside of the build is its sheer cost for the min-max version, because we utilize some very expensive jewels and gear, including a mage blood. We also have to balance our stats and resist, and this is not easy to do because we need 160 strength, dexterity and int, making the gear up for the character a challenging puzzle. But in my opinion, it's good to have chase uniques and challenging things to do in the game, making the grind more enjoyable. Do not worry, however, I will talk about budget alternatives too. Like I've already previously discussed in the Bleed and Greed build variation, a couple of things I won't be repeating myself here. Anything that's new I will talk about, however. So I encourage you to take a look at that video before proceeding. Or if you're just starting, I recommend taking a look at the budget version in the description of this video. For our defenses, we got 2700 maximum life with 43,000 effective health pool, 60% estimated physical damage reduction through our 5000 armor, 62% estimated evasion chance to our 16,000 evasion, with 58% chance to deflect and 46% damage prevented by deflection. Then we have 46% block, but we actually get 41% block chance without the Temple Surgeon enhancement, and 75% all resists including chaos. For our offenses, we got 260,000 rake DPS on PoE Ninja, but this number is poorly calculated in my opinion, because PoB says we are reaching at least 1 million dots per second, and honestly I don't even know if they take the 10 rage consumption for 35% more damage into consideration, or the fact that we ancestrally boost our rake every 3 seconds for another more damage multiplier. And this more damage multiplier apply both to our bleed and our ignite. Then we have close to 45% chance to aggravate and ignites on hit, and 65% if we crit. Speaking of crit, we have 40% chance crit and 5% chance to twice crit through Garukan gem with a 274 critical damage bonus, 37% chance to daze, 25% chance to maim, and finally 76% increase item rarity. Now let's check out the skill gems. For our main gems, we have Rake, linked with Garukan's Resolve, Rage Force 2, Ancestral Call 2, Deep Cuts 2, and Rigwald's Ferocity. Very important disclaimer, if you're using Rigwalds, make sure your Rake or your character is using only the second weapon slot. In case you have budget restraints, I recommend switching Garukan's Resolve with Fire Attunement and Rigwalds with Heft. Our secondary, Spear Field, is linked with Rage 3, Bleed 3, Rapid Attacks 2, Rearm 2, and Atalui Bloodletting. For our utility, we have Ritual Sacrifice linked with Prolonged Duration 2. This skill allows us to consume rare monster corpses to steal their modifier, similar to Headhunter. We put priority on Haste Aura, Enraged, or Soul Eater from Abyss modifiers. Bloodhound Mark is linked with Stun 2, Efficiency 2, Mark of Siphoning 2, and Mark for Death. along with Physical Mastery. This skill we only use once on big bosses. Blood Hunt linked with Execute 2, Fire Attunement, Heft, Momentum and Excise. This skill is only used as a sort of calling strike, but lately I've neglected to even press it. So feel free to drop it if you so desire. Then we have Disengage, which is linked with Rapid Attacks 2, Cooldown Recovery 2, Fire Exposure, Potent Exposure and Ignite 3. Since I'm using this skill quite often now, I thought why not transform it into a way to apply exposure, since we mainly use it to dash in and out with our rake. Another addition to this variation is the Infernal Cry skill, which I linked with Azir's Impatience, Raging Cry, Tireless, Fire Mastery and Paquette's Pact. This cry I mainly use when farming Omega juiced maps and there's like 30 rare monsters waiting to be popped. For our auras, we have Blood Boil, which is our Ascendancy linked with Prolonged Duration 2, Swift Affliction 2, Physical Mastery, Acrimony and Magnified Area 2. Then we have Berserk, linked with Seraph's Heart and Vitality. In case you have budget restraints, I recommend ignoring both of these links for you to free up 65 Spirit. Although it is nice to not degen from our rage and also have a 20% chance for our resist to be counted as 90%, this min-max is not mandatory. Removing 65 total spirit will make it so that the build costs way less, allowing you to gear up on a budget. Herald of Blood then is linked with Poison 3, Bursting Plague, Breed 3, Magnified Area 2 and Physical Mastery. I only recently heard about this skill, about its infinite chain, and is honestly a very nice addition to our AoE clear. And last but not least, our Blasphemy, that is linked with Elemental Weakness, Fire Mastery, Magnified Area 2, Heightened Curse and Ritualistic Curse. I highly recommend using Gem Cutter Prisms to make the skills 20% quality and corrupt them for an extra level whenever possible. Now I will showcase the gear that I am using. I will start off with our core uniques, Saita Spear. At first glance this item might seem cheap, but oh boy do we have to hit the jackpot to craft it. Ideally you start with a very nicely rolled spear and runeforge it through the new anvil. Then we have some options. Either try to use quality amplifiers to reach upwards of 30% quality through temple currency with a chance to corrupt it, or just valid at 20% for an implicit or increase in its stats. Then we have to use a Val Cultivation Orb on it and hope it hits 1 out of the 5 modifiers, which is the chance to bleed. If we do so, then we have a 25% chance to get what we want, which is a big percentage increase on our physical damage roll. This roll is anywhere from 300 to 400%. Ideally we want the top end. If you are wealthy, you can try the whole setup I just explained with an exceptional base that has 2 sockets, leveraging even better DPS, but it will be a huge difference in price per try. We socketed a Farl's Rune for the hunt into this one. Then we have our 1 Exalt ring called Blistering Bond. This item becomes up to 10 exalts with perfect rolls on its life and minus cold resist. It is very important you get a nearly perfect one because getting resist on this build is not easy. We quality it up to 20% using Flash Catalyst to increase its life rolls. Valid for an implicit and then twice corrupted for a second implicit. Most important implicit being any kind of attributes. This ring allows our bleed damage to be converted into fire damage and also making our fire damage contribute to bleed magnitude. Then we have our shield, Chernobog's Pillar, another very cheap unique, but with the right rolls and extra sockets becomes quite expensive. We want a nice roll on armor, valid for an extra socket and twice corrupted for an extra chance to block. This item will provide us not only with some resists and armor, but most importantly giving us a gain damage as fire damage based on our block percentage. Buying this item with an exceptional base allows us to skip the twice corrupt step, but also increases your divine spend per try. We soaking in 2 Ox Idols into this one. Last but not least, of our core uniques, Constricting Command, Unique Helmet. Allows us to be always surrounded as long as there is a single monster around us with a perfect roll. This item too needs to be Val cultivated and remove the life regeneration and transform it into presence area of effect. I also min-max this item with a Spirit Corrupt implicit, which is not cheap to do. But if you have budget restraints, just ignore everything I just said and get 2 socket exceptional or regular Constricting Command with max rolls and do not corrupt it. Socket in a perfect cold resist and Idol of Ygritte if you have an extra socket. These are our core uniques, but there is actually one more unique. The one, the only, Mage Blood. I couldn't resist the temptation and I ended up using it. But this is in no way, shape or form a mandatory unique. It can be replaced with Rizlata's Spoil for a big chunk of life and a more multiplier on our physical damage, also corrupting it exceed its stats. Feel free to check out the previous build guide for more information about this. But our Mage Blood is honestly wonderful. I use no duplicates and 2 offensive and 2 defensive flask buffs, Diamond, Silver, Granite and Jade, making us not only very tanky but also helps with the fluidity of our gameplay because we hit more crits and we have more skill speed. Now let's talk about our rare gear. The amulet we are using, I recommend just buying it because we want it to be crafted with the new Breach Essence, allowing us to transform the +3 level of melee skills into a +4 through quality. This allows us to fully take advantage of our ascendancy with 25% increased effect from our jewelry, boosting this item to +5 level of melee skills. Then we just need a big life roll and any resists, preferably on a solar base for easier spirit reservation. We anoint it with Blood-Tearing. Our rings are 1 amethyst ring with a nice chunk of rarity, life and attributes, but most importantly big flat physical damage roll, which is further boosted by the quality, and a breach ring preferably with 60% attack quality and big flat physical and fire rolls along with attributes. Please do not underestimate the importance of these attributes because we want to wear all the gear and utilize all the gems, and we require upwards to 160 of which. All of these items can be cut down, however, in cost quite a lot if you don't care about the min-maxing. Our gloves have a big life roll, flat physical damage and level of all melee skills. We also solve our mana issues with a Leech mana roll here. We socket in a rune called Cadigan's Epiphany, allowing us to get an extra jewel socket on our gloves. Our boots, 35% movement speed with life and triple tier 1 resists. We socket another perfect all resist rune here. Our body armor needs to have a big chunk of evasion, at least 2000, and a chaos resist roll to cap everything. Ideally with tier 1 spirit if you're looking to have everything min-maxed. This item is either really expensive or really cheap depending on how you want to buy it. Although not necessary, volleying our gear for an extra socket is very helpful, but please beware this might break your items. For the charms we are using Fall of the Axe to get onslaught when we get slowed, Nascent Hope for freeze immunity, Rite of Passage with Possessed by the Spirit of the Bear for 20% increased life, 60% stun threshold, 60% stun build up and 20% reduced damage taken for its duration. Our flasks are an instant recovery ultimate flask with increased charges and an instant ultimate mana flask with chance to gain charges on kill. If you get a good flask like this, make sure to corrupt it for a chance to exceed its maximum quality. For the passive tree, we are a ritualist, so we take full advantage of our extra ring with Unfurled Finger and boost our jewelry stats with Mystic Attunement. We take Corrupted Life Force for the Blood Boil skill and As the Whispers demand for the Headhunter from Timu buffs. We path to all the critical, bleed and ailment magnitude on the tree and all the nearby jewel sockets. We do not use any weapon switch setup, so do not worry about splitting your skill points, but make sure in case you're using revals to always be on the second weapon skill set. If you are interested in the order of this passive, check out the Mobalytics written guide for a more thorough explanation. Most importantly now, the jewels. First, we use a Prism of Belief to boost our Ray skill by 3 levels. Then, we use a Heart of the Well with very nice and useful rolls, which is actually not that expensive. We volley it to exceed its stats. But don't worry, it's about to get very expensive because we are using a very nicely rolled Time Lost Ruby in this spot to increase the magnitude of our bleed from any allocated notable radius. We also boost this stat even further for up to 25%. In combination with our Megalomaniac, we can quite easily get around 50% increased magnitude from this combination in this particular area, along with some very nice extra stats. The Megalomaniac can have any useful stats, but in case you find one with Blood-Tearing, we can replace our Amulet Anoint with Zarok's Gift for an extra jewel socket. For our Diamond Rare Jewel, I had a shock checking out the prices recently because I was buying 30 Exalt double magnitude diamonds and volleying them. Now they are 50 divines a pop, and it sucks because I solved my percent life gain on kill from this jewel, so if you have a budget restraint, I suggest going for a single magnitude roll here along with this percent life on kill. We only use one such jewel in our gloves, but if we get our hands on a Voices unique jewel, we can soak and hit another one. This being the last piece of the puzzle for me on this character. For the permanent buffs from campaign, you can find all this information in the description of the video, either on Mobilytics or PoE Ninja. This concludes the endgame build guide for my Bleed and Burn Ritualist. If you have questions or suggestions, please post them down below in the comment section or come ask them in chat when I stream. I'd love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you soon. Exile